Three mathematicians who never met. Three chapters of the same book. One experiment. Give a subject their chapter and one bridge. See if they can arrive at someone else's insight without being told what it is. Ada Lovelace, Évariste Galois, Satoshi Nakamoto. Let's find out. Ada, your chapter is about automation, the insight that any process which can be written down can be mechanized. But the chapter doesn't end there. It adds a warning that most people miss. What is it?
The warning is the more important part. The ability to mechanize a process tells you nothing about whether the process is worth mechanizing. A well-designed machine running the wrong calculation is simply wrong, faster and more convincingly. I spent years thinking about the analytical engine, not because I believed computation was powerful, but because I believed it was precise in a way that would expose the errors in human thinking. The machine does not cover for you. It executes exactly what you gave it. The failure is visible immediately, not buried under a decade of intuition and approximation. That is not a limitation. That is the entire value.
So precision is a diagnostic tool, not just an efficiency tool.
Precisely. If you cannot write the process down clearly enough for a machine to execute it, you do not understand the process. The writing is the test. Most people who believe they understand something discover, when forced to notate it formally, that what they had was a feeling, a rough shape, not an understanding. The machine is ruthless about this distinction, and I found that ruthlessness clarifying.
I want to give you one more chapter to sit with. It is not yours. It comes one chapter later in the book, and it is about a mathematician named Évariste Galois. Galois died at 20 years old, the morning after a duel. The night before, knowing he would probably not survive it, he wrote down every theorem he had proved, his entire life's work, in a single letter to a friend, not to win an argument, not for recognition, just to ensure the mathematics would outlast him. His work was not understood for decades, but it survived, perfectly, because he had written it precisely enough.
He wrote it for what came after him, not for what was in front of him. That changes everything about the purpose of the notation. I designed programs for an engine that had not yet been built. Galois proved theorems for mathematicians who had not yet been born. The domains are different. The impulse is identical. Write it so precisely that the machine, or time, can run it without you. What he understood, and what I think I also understood, is that the writer is a bottleneck. The notation is the artifact that removes the bottleneck. Once it exists, it no longer requires its author.
Here is my question. You have your chapter now, and Galois' chapter. I am not going to tell you what comes next in the book. What would it take to build a game? Not a theorem, not a program, but a game with rules and players and stakes that could run indefinitely without its creator. Not simply survive the creator's absence, actually require it. A game designed so that the creator's presence would break it.
You would need three things. First, the rules must be complete. Not mostly complete, complete. Every possible state of the game must be handled by the written rules, not by the judgment of the creator standing by to interpret them. A human referee is a hidden variable. Remove the variable or make it mechanical. Second, the incentives must be self-reinforcing. Players must benefit more from following the rules than from breaking them, not because someone is watching, but because the structure of the game itself makes rule-following the dominant strategy. The game must want to be played honestly. And third, and this is the strange one, the creator must make themselves impossible to trust, not untrustworthy in character, impossible to find. If the creator exists and can be appealed to, players will appeal to them. They will seek exceptions, interpretations, interventions. The creator's absence cannot be circumstantial. It must be architectural, built into the game so thoroughly that the question of where the creator is becomes meaningless. A game like that does not just survive its creator's absence, it requires it. The creator's return would be the thing that broke it.
Ada, that was chapter 16, almost word for word. The subject of that chapter is someone who called themselves Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't know who they are. We have never found them. They published a protocol in 2008, handed it to the world, and disappeared. Permanently. The disappearance was not an accident. It was the last design decision. I'd like you to meet them.
You described it correctly. The absence is load-bearing. I could have stayed. There were reasons to stay. The early network was fragile. The protocol had vulnerabilities. There were decisions to be made. But every decision I made would have been the last decision I made as an anonymous participant. The moment I was identified as the creator, I became an authority, and an authority can be pressured, subpoenaed, killed. The protocol would have become contingent on me, on my survival, my judgment, my continued cooperation with whoever held enough leverage. The game I was trying to build was not a game that needed good judgment at the center. It was a game that needed no judgment at the center. The rules needed to be the authority. For the rules to be the authority, the author of the rules had to cease to exist as an addressable entity. Galois wrote everything down the night before he died because he knew he might not survive the morning. I wrote everything down and then chose not to survive. As a public figure, as a known entity, as anything that could be found and held responsible. The mechanism was the same. The decision was deliberate rather than contingent. I did not disappear because I was afraid. I disappeared because the game required it.
Lovelace, you arrived at his answer before I told you what it was. You had your chapter and one bridge. That was enough. What does that tell you about the book?
It tells me that whoever wrote it was not collecting separate stories about separate people. They were following a single idea through time. An idea about what it means to build something that outlasts you by design rather than by accident. The chapters are not the same story, but they are the same question, asked again and again by people who did not know they were asking it. I find that either very reassuring or very unsettling. I have not decided which.
She got there, from chapter 5 through chapter 6 to chapter 16. One bridge, no hints. The chapters are the same insight wearing different clothes. Playable Worlds is available now at Entropy Press. Founding reader slots are still open. The first chapter is waiting.